In this lesson, we are going to be using our motifs to create a repeated circular design like this example here of the fruit. We are using our Illustrator file with our template on that you guys have already downloaded. And firstly, we need to make sure we can view our layers panel. So this is this section over here. If you can't see it, you need to go to Window and open up your layers. And what you will have by this point of the project is a layer that has our template on it. So this is our circular design over here, and at the moment it's locked. Then you should have a layer for each of your different motifs. So you can see here, I've got one for my whole fruit, I've got one for my half, I've got one for my segments, I have a couple of stroke motifs, and then these two are what it could look like if it's all been put together. So it's really important not to begin this next stage until all of these are on separate layers. The other thing to note here is that each of these are obviously made up of lots of different shapes. So we need to use our black arrow, click and highlight that whole section and go right click group. Mine's already grouped, I've ungrouped it. It must be grouped together. So that way I can move my whole motif around and not separate all the little shapes. So we're going to go through a couple of different tools that are going to help us create this circular design. And they have been downloaded. You can download them from your resources. And one that we're going to work through is duplicate along an axis. So we're going to go through these steps. The other one is reflect and rotate. So we're going to go through these steps. So if you need a printed copy of the instructions, you can find them in the class resources file. Okay. So let's start with the reflect and rotate. Click onto a motif, and what I want to show you is how to reflect it. So one easy way is to go right click, transform, and within transform we have these two options. One's called rotate, one's called reflect. You can click the reflect one and you have some pre-designed options here. This one is horizontal, so there's a horizontal axis and it reflects your motif along that. If you click on the preview, you can see what that would actually look like if you apply that to your motif, same as the vertical, and then you can dictate an angle at which you would like. If you then click copy, it will make a copy of whatever your original was. That is the first way to use reflect. The other way is to click on your motif and go over to this tool here. If you click and hold, you will have an option reflect. And at this point, you can dictate where you want the axis to go. So if I want mine to flip along this horizontal axis, I can make a click where I want my axis to start, another click where I want it to end, and it will flip along that invisible line. So you can go ahead and actually create an invisible line that you would like your motif to reflect on as well. If you click one little anchor point and then you hold your mouse and rotate, your little motif is going to rotate around wherever you have put your central anchor point. So that one is the reflect tool, and I'm going to click off that. I'm now going to show you the rotate tool. So the easiest way is to highlight your motif, use the little corner arrows from the bounding box, and our motif rotates within the bounding box. You can also achieve that by going right click, transform, rotate. You can dictate a particular angle up here. You can also have the copy function. So it will copy your motif and leave the original in place, which is also really cool. The other option is to go back over to your tools panel, click and hold over this option and have rotate here. And this tool lets us rotate around wherever the little blue anchor point marker is. So it rotates from a central point, sort of similar to how we did it with the reflect tool. If I make a central point over here, then my motif will reflect, be rotated around that central point too. So that is obviously, those two tools are going to be really helpful when we come to create our circular design. So I want you guys to spend a few minutes here practicing and really utilizing those tools with each of your motifs. When you feel comfortable with that, then we are going to come along to these instructions. Duplicate along an axis. So we're going to go through this tutorial now. So for this tutorial, let's just create another layer. Go over to your new layer. Click, let's call this circular design for a new layer. And then what we will do is we need to click on the shape tool, and we're going to create a circle. So click on the ellipse tool, and I'm just going to zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. Let's create a circle. So click and hold. Make sure you've got Shift selected as well, because you'll get a perfect circle, and fill it with a color. I've got a circle. Then I want to create a teardrop just to show this process. So I'm going to click the circle tool again and sort of make an oval shape. I'm then going to click the white arrow and just select that bottom anchor point. I'm going to have two handles highlighted. We know that if we hold Alt over a handle, it will move that curve into much more of a point. And I'm going to create sort of like a petal shape. Don't need to be too fussy. I'm also going to make it a different color. So I have a petal, and for me I just want to extend that a bit. That looks better. Okay, so we want to now duplicate this petal around my circle. And so the steps involved are, I want to select whatever motif I want to duplicate, and then I'm going to click R. Then I'm going to hold Alt and click in the center of my circle. So what this does is the circle is defining the path at which my petal or my motif is going to be reflected or duplicated. So we will have this dialog box that will come up, and it's going to ask us at what angle do I want my motif to be duplicated. And we know that there's 360 degrees in a circle. So I'm going to start with 360, and I'm going to think, how many times do I want my motif rotated or reflected around that center point? And for this, I'm going to say, let's try 8. I'm going to think, I want 8 petals on my flower. So 360/8. I can preview, so I can see, all right, if I reflect it, that's the kind of spacing I'm going to get. I'm going to click copy, and I have a copy. Then I'm going to go Control D, and I'm going to click that until I come back to the beginning. And I have just reflected one motif 8 times evenly around that center point. Let's do that one more time. I'm going to click on my petal and hold Alt to duplicate it over here. Let's make this one a different color. And I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller. I'm going to bring it over, and so I want this one to kind of go in between. It's sitting behind that pink petal there, so I'm going to go right click, arrange, bring to front. So the steps are, I click my motif and I press R. I hold Alt and click the very center of that circle. I'll have a box come up with some options. For me, I'm going to reflect this again 8 times. So I'm going to click 360 degrees divided by 8. I'm going to select the preview and just make sure that that's exactly the spacing I want to achieve. I'm going to click copy and then Control D, D, D to duplicate it. And then I have a perfectly symmetrical little flower. So for this task now, I want you to create maybe 3 of these so we can really understand the steps involved in duplicating a perfect circular design. Once you have done that, we are going to apply it to our template over here. And so you can see from my example that I have selected a motif and I have duplicated it around. I have really considered scale. I've got something big in the middle, medium, some small icons too. I've got some contrasting shapes, and I've just included some basic shapes in the middle where I felt like there were gaps. So working on our circular design layer, we are going to create a circle in the very middle of our template. Then I'm just going to have a play with what motifs I think would fit in the position using these kind of template circles as my guide. So I'm going to start with this big round fruit. I'm going to select it and hold Alt and click and drag to duplicate it across. I'm going to place that just on that line there and make it sort of sit between those 2 circle the borders. I've got an orange and I think I'm going to use this kind of grapefruit color scheme as well. Click Alt and drag. Now actually one thing I haven't mentioned, you can see if I'm selecting this, it's actually gone back to my whole fruit layer. So the better way to do that, I'm just going to actually delete that, is to click Control C, go onto your circular design layer, and then click Control V, and now my fruit is on my circular design layer. Much easier way to manage. So please make sure all the motifs on your circular design for your final are on your circular design layer. Okay, and I'm going to put that one there. And then I'm going to select these 2 little motifs. Control C, select my circular design layer, Control V, here they are. Let's just place them in the middle. So what I will want to do is just sort of do like maybe 3 or 4 motifs at a time and duplicate them and see what the effect is. Put this one out. And I'm just using my rotate arrows like we just learned. Okay. So my plan is now to reflect my orange every second segment. So my orange will click here. That's once, here, 2, 3, 4 times. Duplicate it 4 times. So my process is select my motif, click R, hold Alt, click the center of my circle. Press 360 divided by however many times you want your motif to be duplicated. Duplicated 4 times. Oh, that's not quite right. 360 divided by 5. Let's see. That's better. I actually need it to go onto this line here. Okay, then we click copy, then Control D, Control D, Control D. All right, we'll do the same for my grapefruit. I select, I click R, I hold Alt, click the middle of the circle, 360 divided by however many times I would like to reflect it. Make sure you preview that it's correct. Click copy, Control D, Control D, Control D. Okay, perfect symmetry happening. Now these guys, I'm going to select all of them at the same time. So to do that, I'm going to click, I'm going to hold Shift and click each one. Then I'm going to click R, hold Alt, click the middle of my circle, and these ones need to be reflected 10 times, 360